Dear students, in the previous class I have discussed about project audit and some other essentials for a project audit. In this lecture, we are going to discuss about when to close a project. In the previous lecture, you can remember that I have talked about essential of an audit and evaluation. So, this lecture I am going to discuss about when to close a project. So, the agenda for this lecture is we can discuss about when we can close a project and what are the method for closing a project. So, some methods are extinction, addition, integration and starvation. Then we will discuss about critical success factors for project implementation. Then we will study about fundamental reasons why some project fail. Then we will study some more reasons why project fail. Then some of the non-technical reasons because of that the projects are closed. We will study about what are the non-technical reasons. Then we will discuss about how to close an agile project. Then we will study about closing the closure process of a project, and finally we will discuss about role of project manager in project closure. Project closure. A project can be said to be closed when work on the substance of the project has ceased or slowed to the point further progress on the project is no longer possible. The next, when we can say a project is closed? When the project has been indefinitely delayed, then we can say the project is closed. Then we can say when its resources have been deployed to other projects, then we can say the project is closed. When the project personnel, especially the project manager, become personae non gratae, in the sense is not at all required by the parent organization with the senior management and the company's lunchroom. So, that also implies that the project is closed. Now, no longer we need to have a separate position called project manager. So, then we can assume that the project is closed. There are four fundamentally different ways to close out a project. One is extinction, second one is addition, third one is integration and the fourth one is starvation. Now, we will discuss about project closure by extinction. The project is stopped, it may end because it has been successful and achieved its goals. For example, the new product has been developed and handed over to the client, or the software has been installed and it is running at the client facility, then we can say the project is closed. So, this type of closing a project is called closure by extinction. The project may also be stopped because it is unsuccessful or has been superseded. For example, the new drug failed efficacy test and alternatives are available for better, faster, cheaper or prettier result, or it may be too expensive and take too long to achieve the desired performance. So, these are the examples of closing a project in the name of extinction. And sometimes changes in the external environment can kill the project as well. For example, the explosion of Challenger shuttle stopped several space shuttle projects overnight, because this environment has affected the other project. So, this is also example of closing a project by extinction. The next type of project closure is called by addition. Most projects are in-house, that is carried out by the project team for use in the parent organization. If a project is a major success, it may be closed by institutionalizing it as a formal part of parent organization. So, that is added to the parent organization because the project is so successful, then we can say it is called a closure by addition. For example, most software engineering and information system department began by reorganizing an engineering or business school subspecialty into a full-fledged department, because it is added to the your major department. So, this is an example of closing a project by addition. The next method for closing the project is called by integration. This method of closing a project is the most common way of dealing with successful and complex projects. The property, equipment, material, personnel and functions of the project are distributed among the existing element of the parent organization, the output of the project become a standard part of operating system of then parent or client, then we can say the project is integrated by the to the parent organization. There is a fourth type of project closure called by starvation. Although we strictly speaking it is not a closure at all, it is slow starvation by budget decrement. Project managers involved in projects for a significant period have faced budget cuts during the business recessions. Budget cuts or decrements are not rare because they are common, they are sometimes used to make a project closure. There may be several reasons why senior management does not wish to close an unsuccessful or obsolete project. In some firms, for example, it is politically dangerous to admit that one has championed a failure, and closing a project that has not accomplished its goals is an admission of failure. The project budget may be significantly reduced, potentially halting project progress and necessitating the reassignment of numerous team members. The project is technically closed, but it still exists as a legal entity with a sufficient staff, including an administrative assistant who annually issues a no progress report. Now, we will discuss about critical success factors for a project implementation. The first factor is called project mission. If the project has clearly defined goals and general directions, so that is very important factor for the success of the project. The second factor is top management support, that is willingness of top management to provide the necessary resources and authority or power for the project success. So, this is the second important enabler for the success of a project. The third one is project schedule or plan, that is if the project has a detailed specification of individual action steps for project implementation, then we can say that that project will lead to a successful project. The next factor for the successful is called client consultation, that is we need to have communication, consultation and active listening to all impacted parties. The next factor for the successful of a project implementation is called personnel, that is recruitment, selection and training of the necessary personnel for the project team. If there are good personnel is there, then the project there is a more chance that project will be successful. Next factor is a technical task, that is availability of required technology and expertise to accomplish the specific technical action steps. So, this will help you to successful implementation of the project. The next factor is client acceptance, that is act of selling the final project to its intended users. If your project is accepted by the client, then we can say that is important factor for success of the project. Then monitoring and feedback, that is timely provision of comprehensive control information at each stage in the implementation process is another important factor for successful implementation of a project. The next most important factor is communication. The provision of an appropriate network and necessary data to all the key actors in the project implementation is very important enabler for a success of a project. Then the troubleshooting, that is ability to handle unexpected crisis and deviations from plan. So, this also an important factor for a successful implementation of a project. Now, we have discussed about various critical success factors. Hereafter we will discuss some of the reasons, fundamental reasons why some project fail. The first reason is the project organization was not at all required, that is the use of project form of organization was inappropriate for this task or in this environment. So, the parent organization must understand that a condition that require instituting project, if a condition is not suitable, then we should not do that activity in the form of a project. The second reason for failure of a project is insufficient support from senior management. Projects invariably develop needs for resources that were not originally allocated. If there is no resources, then we can say that the project cannot be implemented. So, argument between functional departments over the command of such resources are prevalent. Without the direct support of a champion in senior management, the project is almost certain to lose resource battle. Once there is no resources, obviously the project will fail. The third reason for failure of a project is naming the wrong person as a project manager. There are many projects in India like the first metro, Dr. Sridharan. So, these are the very important project managers. So, the project is so successful because of the right project manager. A common mistake is to appoint an individual with excellent technical skill, but weak managerial skills, or training as a project manager. If there is no proper project manager, that project will fail. Then the next reason is poor planning. This is prevalent cause of a project failure. In the rush to get the project's substance underway, competent planning is neglected. So, the crisis management becomes a routine in such situations, leading to increased difficulties and errors, project delays and budget overruns. So, if there is no proper planning, that will lead to project failure. Now, we can see that some more reasons why project fails. No use was made of earlier project final report that contained several recommendations for operating project in the future, because sometime the project manager will not refer the previous project reports. What was the recommendation from the previous reports? If they are not using that previous report, that will lead to project failure. Then the time cost estimate were not prepared by those responsible for the work. Many times if it is prepared by a top managers, but it is not prepared by the person who is doing that work, then that project will fail. Then starting late, the project manager jumped into the task without adequate planning, that also will lead to project fail. Some more reasons are project personnel were removed without adjusting the schedule or reassigned during slow periods and unavailable when required. So, if the project personnel is removed without doing proper arrangement, then the project will fail. Then the project auditors, evaluators were reluctant to conduct careful, detailed, meaningful evaluations. If it is not properly audited or evaluated, that will lead to a project failure. Then the project was allowed to continue long after it has ceased to make cost effective progress. So, unnecessary continuation of the project also will lead to failure of the project. Now, we will study some of the non-technical reasons because of that the projects are closed. There are several non-technical reasons why projects are closed, but almost always these closures seems to be associated with the conflict when the conflict is anticipated at the beginning of the project. The first reason is political closure. We mentioned this type of project demise when discussing termination by murder. These closures are typically the result of conflict among senior managers, one of whom may be terminated along with the project. The second reason is cross cultural closures. Multinational projects often fail due to communication issues between cultural groups or incompatible working styles. Conflict arises due to poor communication or diverse working style, leading to competition for ascendancy or win-lose negotiations among different cultures. The same cross-cultural forces operate when different disciplines, marketing and engineering, develop precisely the same problems. The next non-technical reasons why project is failing or the project is closed is senescent closures. There are projects that die simply because senior managers, the project champion and the project manager, even key project workers lost interest in the project. The project has neither failed nor succeeded, it simply exists. Meanwhile, other exciting new ideas are being projected. So, that means that the idea become very old and the people are working on the project are not at all interested. So, that will lead to closure of the project. So, the organization's attention and resources is being directed elsewhere. The conflict between old and the new way may not be active. So, the senescent projects give way to the new project ideas. Now, we will discuss about closing agile projects. In agile approaches, the project may be terminated at any time if the product owner determined the cost required to complete the remaining features in the product backlog exceeds the benefit of adding these features. So, in the agile project we see cost benefit analysis. If the cost is exceeding than the benefit, then we will stop doing that project. Thus, agile project can be closed when sufficient functionality has been delivered and when it is determined that the future investment would be less than the incremental feature value. Furthermore, no stigma is associated with the closing a project early in agile. Rather, it is regarded as a good business practices to redeploy project team members and resources when the business value of completing the remaining backlog is less than the cost of completing the remaining items in the product backlog. So, in the agile project context, so closing the project and early is not seen as a stigma. It is good for the company, because if there is no value for doing any additional features, then we need not do that activity in the agile project. Now, we will discuss about project closure processes. So, in the decision process of closing a project, so the decision aiding models for the closure decision fall into three generic categories. First, some models base the decision on the degree to which the project qualifies against a set of factors generally associated with successful projects. So, we compare with some factors which are successful, then we compare with our current project whether we are able to get that factors or not. So, if we are not able to get factors of a successful project, then we will stop closing this existing project. Second, some models base the decision on the degree to which the project meet its goals and objectives. So, if it is not meeting the degree which we expected, then we close the project. The third, there are projects that have fallen far enough behind their schedules and planned progress that the cost to complete them is no longer justifiable, then we have to close our projects. Now, we will see the implementation process of closing a project. Once it has been decided to close a project, the process by which it will be terminated must be implemented. The closure can be planned and orderly or a simple hatchet job. The former is apt to have significantly better result. So, we suggest that the closure process be planned, budgeted and scheduled just as done for any other phase of the project life cycle. This is an example of design for project closures. So, the project is closed out. So, what are the different role of department? For example, organization, close out meeting, reassignment plan, personal reports. Suppose the financial division, charge audit, collect receivables and final reports. So, the purchasing department, compliance documents, supplier notification, final payments, and site, close down facilities, equipment material disposal. So, this is the design for a project closure. Now, we will discuss about the role of project manager in project closure. The processing of the project closeout is conducted under the direct supervision of the project manager, but this often raises dilemmas. For many project managers, closure signals the end of their reign as the project leaders. If the project manager has another project to lead, the issue may not be serious, but if there is no other project and the project manager faces a return to staid life in a functional division, there may be a great temptation to stretch out the shutdown the process, because the project manager is no other job. So, he may prolong or extend the project closing process. Special closure managers are sometimes helpful in completing the long and involved process of shutting down a project. In such case, the project manager is transferred to another project or reassigned to a functional home. The closure manager does not have to deal with substantive project task and therefore, may be a person familiar with the administrative requirements of closure and the environment within which the project will be operating. This is the checklist for project closure. You see that there are different item numbers there: task description, project office and project team organization. So, what was required, required date, assigned responsibility, priority, notes, reference. Then this is the sample checklist for project closure. So, we have information regarding project office, instruction and procedures issues, instruction procedures, financial informations, project definition, plans, budget and schedules, work authorization and control, project evaluation and control, management and customer reporting. Now, we will discuss about the primary duties of the closure manager are compressed in the following 9 general tasks. The first one is ensure completion of the work, including task performed by subcontractors, notify the client of the project completion and ensure that delivery is accomplished. Acceptance of the project must be acknowledged by the client, complete the documentation including evaluation project deliverables and preparing the final report should be completed, including lessons learned from the project administration and management. Clear for final billings and oversee preparation of the final invoices sent to the client. Redistribute personnel, materials, equipments and any other resources to the appropriate places. Clear project with the legal counsel or consultant, file for patent if appropriate, record and archive all non-disclosure documents, determine what records to keep like manuals, reports and other paperwork, ensure that such documents are stored in your proper places and that responsibility for document retention is turned over to the parent organization's archivist. Then ascertain any product support requirements like spare services, decide how such support will be delivered and assign responsibility, then oversee the closing of the project's books. These are the responsibilities of a project manager. Dear students, in this lecture I have discussed about the project closures. After that I have explained 4 ways of closing a project like by extinction, by addition, by integration and by starvation. After that I have discussed about critical success factors for project implementation. Then I have discussed about fundamental reasons why some project fails. Also I have discussed about non-technical reasons why projects are closed. Then I have discussed about how to close an agile project. Then I have explained about closure process of a project. Finally, I have explained the role of project manager in project closure. Thank you.